Hi, I'm Denise Christensen,
And I'm Yvette Hagerman.
and our current debate issue is tackling a problematic behavior management issue.
Teachers' intervention in childhood bullying problems. Childhood bullying has increasingly been recognized as one of the most common and widespread forms of school violence occurring not only in the United States, but in other countries as well.
Yeah.
Crothers and Colbert, 2008. In the largest survey of bullying in the schools in the United States to date, Nansel, Overpeck, Pia, Runnen, Simmons, Morton, and Schneet, 2001, 29.9% of students were found to be involved in bullying dynamics. 13% as bullies, 10.6% as victims, and 6.3% as bully victims. The increase in the number of bullying incidents taking place in schools has prompted schools to take action. Many schools have implemented school-wide positive behavior intervention and support systems to address the issue of bullying and violence among students. The bullying and violence normally takes place in the classroom while the teacher is there, in the hallways, in the bathrooms, and on the playgrounds. Teachers need to be better prepared and trained to address the issue of bullying in the classrooms. They need to view the problem of bullying as a behavior management issue in the classroom. There are several ways teachers can address the issue of bullying in classrooms. The most effective method is addressing the issue is for the teacher to establish better classroom management and discipline procedures, better instruction, and teacher training in recognizing bullying behaviors.
Well, I think bullying, based on the research that I've come up with, and this is by Ponsor 2010, I'm saying the act of bullying is a pervasive social problem. The definition that he has is the act of bullying is when a physically, mentally, or psychologically advantaged individual or advantaged in some other way inflict harm on a weaker individual for no justifiable reason. And with this in mind, we've got to ask, as a society, what constitutes bullying? Does this definition, what what definition do we give to things where behaviors are bullying? Who is responsible for it, and how can it be diminished? And it's not solely during school that bullying occurs. So there are many acts of bullying at home. Does it start in the classroom or does it start in the schoolyard or the backyard? I'm saying it starts at home. And based on the research that I've come up with, there's a lot to justify my point. I say, not only that, but there are mental health issues that come into play with bullying also. And so as a society, we have to consider, is a Band-Aid by just having an intervention, a policy or some kind of discussion, is that going to be enough? Or do we as a society need to counsel? Do we need to make a larger program so that people become aware, so that there is a common understanding of that bullying is not good, that do we have a goal? Do we create a conscious awareness to the problem of bullying so that not only teachers and administrators, but parents and society as a whole can look to eliminate the behaviors and become more aware of bullying?
Well, I think effective instruction is probably the most powerful form of classroom management because children who are actively engaged in learning are less likely to have time and inclination to engage in bullying. That's from Crothers and Colbert, 2008. I think teachers should use curriculum and instruction as part of their classroom management. And I think by using classroom management tools and teachers are better trained and better prepared to recognize the bullying behaviors, I think that it could be addressed in the elementary school and be addressed more effectively than just society itself. I mean, if if we give children a learning environment that would foster critical thinking skills, opportunities to engage in learning activities where they need to collaborate on projects, I think that they would be more apt to improve attitudes and relationships among students, like, for instance, special education inclusion classrooms and students in culturally diverse classrooms. They can use curriculum which is directly related to addressing the effects of bullying on students, sensitizing them to the issue. For example, programs like literacy through characterization. Curriculum teaches students how to recognize bullying and what to do if someone they know is being bullied at school. They need to be able to develop peer issue problem solving skills of their own. Because if they're being bullied at school, they need to learn how to identify the problem in the best way, the most appropriate method of dealing with the problem. Who to report it to, what they should do if somebody's being bullied. And teachers can use this kind of platform in the classroom to discuss with their students the long-term effect of bullying, not only on the victims, but consequences to the bullies themselves.
Mm-hmm. But these are already after acts of bullying have occurred.
Yes.
You know, we as a society as a whole, parents, you know, we have a responsibility to avoid these acts of bullying by teaching from in a more global way, cultural, you know, being acceptable of other people. And you mentioned these
Mm-hmm.
same things that teachers can do as classroom management, but you know, we have many different types of teachers. So teachers have the advantage of being with students, and they have the advantage of being able to intervene if they're not the bully themselves, or if they have seen the bullying, the act of bullying, or if they feel that that act was bullying. Because number one, you know, not all teachers are adequately equipped to address bullying. Number two, they're not, maybe they may not have witnessed the act of bullying, so then they have to intervene when it's really just possibly hearsay. Granted, it probably happened, but how can a teacher step in if they don't
The
have
fine line
seen it?
between tattling and
Yeah, and also, you know, there's not really even an agreed upon definition of bullying. So, from teacher to teacher, from teacher to administration, from administration to from different schools to schools, or
mm-hmm.
even parenting, what parents constitute bullying to what teachers do. And finally, bottom line is, I thinking what one teacher might identify as mild bullying might be considered typically developing childhood behavior for somebody else. So it's very broad. And so my thinking is, rather than having the teachers have the responsibility of being able to handle it, we as society, based on what we see in the media, how almost, you know, any movie, there's, if it's not actual violence, it might be accomplishing some dirty deed over one another. It could be, you know, egotism. It's selfish. We do have a society that's based on greed. If we go back to the biblical principles, you know, those things are not those things are
Mm-hmm.
not biblically right. If we go back to even teaching our children biblical principles, but then there's the division of church and state. So how far can we go with this? I think society as a whole has to clean it up. We need to make it a conscious awareness as a body joined together, not just at the schools where, you know, it's a smaller population that has to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
It has to start at the bottom, has to start as a grassroots start, and we need to clean up our society so we can take care of our kids and we can take care of our adults who those children eventually turn into adults. They're 10 times more likely to lie. They're, you know, 6 times more likely to harm another. They're 2.5 times more likely to steal. Those kind of things, they happen because we don't have any guidelines. We have no boundaries. We have no acceptable, understood definition of what's acceptable.
But if teachers are trained in aspects of bully intervention and prevention, if they learn to recognize what bullying behaviors are and are able to intervene in them early on or even stop them before they start, but if they are trained in this aspect, it goes back to them teaching kids social behaviors to where you can teach them what is the appropriate way to treat somebody.
So
What is
you're
the
saying if
appropriate
they're
way to
not going to
treat?
get it at home,
Then they got to
which
get
is
it at
my point,
school.
because they're not getting it at home, then the only place that they're going to probably have a chance to get it is through school.
Well, the school is a starting point because teachers, especially in elementary school, teachers spend what 6 hours a day with their students, so they are in effect parenting those children. So they
Yeah,
are
but you know,
giving
there
them
is
the
a
social and
division.
moral guidelines that they might be lacking. Yeah, I think the outside world is a big influence, but if they are learning how to cope or learning what appropriate social skills are, I mean, pulling Susie's hair is not acceptable behavior.
And I agree that the teachers do have an influence on the students, but whose responsibility is it? Where does it really begin, and where can we prevent it? I guess my biggest concern is that if the teachers are already burdened with overload of academics and guiding pacing guidelines and, you know, pressures that they have to meet just teaching academics, how can they fit in all of this other stuff that's expected on them? I think
If
it's
we can
society.
embed the bully prevention in the curriculum itself, That
Well,
would be
that
a
would be
good
good.
start. Yeah,
And
that'd be
society
great.
would have to blend that because that's a do-gooder kind of thing that's coming from
Yeah.
not our society's
Well, stories that they
actual.
read during, language arts.
Mhm.
Those should be stories that teach morals and values.
Yeah.
They have lessons to be learned. That's how children learn, is through not implementation.
Well, having it embedded. I
Yeah.
agree on that one. I think we have to get a buy-in by the parents. We have to have parents more accountable for what happens in the schools. If their student is a bully,
Mhm.
bring that parent in. Let them see the effects, the ill effects that it had on the victim and the victim's parents and those that were witness. I think bottom line is, I think it's a communal thing that we as a society have to support our schools as we're trying to teach our children, but it comes from a larger place.
Well, I think the diminishment can start at school with teachers and implementing these types of things, having social contracts. In the social contract, the purpose of that is to teach kids what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in the classroom environment. I mean, what kind of behaviors are tolerated? Be consistent with those guidelines. I mean, pulling Susie's hair is not okay on Tuesday, but not on Wednesday, and you're going to get in trouble.
And those guidelines are a quasi sign of what would it be like with society's laws and consequences as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, I believe that students need to learn how to resolve conflicts with their peers. They need to be taught the appropriate ways to resolve their conflicts with their peers. These lessons start in the classrooms at school, and the majority of bullying takes place in the classrooms, not on the way to school, and usually not at home. With
well,
some research says,
within the home, and peer bullying is that's also a big concern.
yeah.
Bullying by the parents to the student, to their kid.
Well, they need to be able to recognize these signs of bullying and intervene in these instances. They need to recognize bullying as a behavior problem and address that issue in the classroom because, like you said, mental illness, unstable home lives, oppositional defiance disorder. So they can do these things if they recognize it as a behavior problem in the classroom. Then they can address it through teaching techniques, curriculum, teaching appropriate social behaviors through the use of contracts, school and classroom rules, and consistent expectations. Your final thoughts,
I
Denise?
guess we agree to disagree.
I guess we do.
And that's good. Okay, now wait. Okay.